direction we want to apply, which is the spirit of leadership. And I'm going to approach that differently. But let me just give a caveat that I have a bias. My bias is the word of God. So I need to let you know. But I'm very objective. Very objective. So I'm going to make references to scripture. But this will not be a religious conversation. It will not be a religious conversation. It will be as practical as possible. All right. So what we're looking at today is spirit of leadership. Spirit of leadership. Spirit of leadership. Spirit of leadership. I'm repeating it for emphasis. Spirit of leadership. And it would be great if you would think with me along these lines. Spirit of leadership. That means leadership is more than a subject. We can do so much by teaching you leadership as a subject, but until we bring you into the understanding that there is a thing as the spirit of leadership, you will be superficial even if you end up as a leader. It's when you tap into the spirit of leadership that leadership becomes organic. When we say spirit is a phenomenon. It's an immaterial substance that is eternal and abundant in a sense. Verse 1. There is a self-revelation of God. The reason why we need to start from God as faith is that we understand that God predates everything that is. So in Genesis 1, verse 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We're looking at the spirit of leadership. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And if you ask the question, who is God? Or what is God? Jesus helps us with that understanding in John 4:24. He says, God is a spirit. I'm going somewhere with this. Please follow me closely. I won't be speaking for long. Jesus said God is a spirit. And then in Genesis 1, verse 1, in the beginning, God. In other words, in the beginning, a spirit created the heavens and the earth. I've just substituted Jesus' definition of God as a spirit with in the beginning, God. So, in the beginning, God, who is a spirit, created the heavens and the earth. That spirit is the spirit I want us to study briefly this morning to help you unleash that same spirit that is in you. That's what we're talking about, the spirit of leadership. The first revelation we see about that spirit is that in the beginning, that spirit created the heavens and the earth. And that's strange. You see, because what came out of the spirit, what was the outcome of the creative enterprise of the spirit was heaven and earth. And heaven and earth is material, it's physical. But we are seeing the superiority of spirit over materiality. You need this understanding not to give up living in a place like Ghana, where the systems that were set up to facilitate your becoming becomes the opposition you have to overcome. Unless you are not honest. So you need to understand your constitution. And then face to face with opposition, you know you will conquer it. Why? You have the spirit of leadership. So a spirit created physical earth. That means physicality, materiality is subject to spirit phenomenon. There is something about you that makes you a master of the material. If you don't understand that, you will spend your life looking for things when you're supposed to be managing things. If you don't understand that, you may exchange your virginity for an opportunity. And yet, you're supposed to be a master, a manager, and a leader of salvation. Then, in verse 2, he says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved over the face of the waters. And then God said, let there be light, and there was. So we begin to see changes in materiality because of the Spirit. What it means is that every situation is subject to Spirit. You need to understand this. I'm not in any way minimizing the difficulties and challenges you'll be dealt with, the issues you have to deal with, issues of lack of poverty, of lack of access, lack of means, lack of resource. All that, as legitimate as they are, if you understand what you are made of, you will stop crying and look for answers. So, no situation is superior to spirit. Materiality is subject to spirit. So, the spirit of leadership is your ticket. It's your right. Just because you have the spirit of leadership, you have the authorization to lead. Your authorization to lead is not because you have a position. Your authorization to lead is because you have the spirit of leadership. That means I may not have a position, but I can still lead because I possess the spirit of leadership. If you're waiting for a position to lead, you may never be offered one. But if you have the spirit of leadership, you can start leading today. It's very important for you to understand this, because nobody is going to give you anything. Stop waiting for somebody to come and save you. Nobody is going to give you anything. Understanding that you have the spirit of leadership gives you the right, the authorization to lead. So that's just to help you understand that leadership is beyond the subject. Leadership has its essence in spirit. And by that, if all you have is just knowledge about leadership and not the spirit of leadership, your leadership will be superficial. Your leadership will be plastic. It won't be organic. It won't be empowering. You will use leadership as a means to an end. You won't use leadership to empower people. You will use it to grab all you can, because you are superficial, you are plastic, you don't have the spirit of leadership, so you are not organic. Now let's begin to look at the spirit of leadership. Assuming we're able to catch a sample of the spirit of leadership and put it under a spiritual microscope so we can see its constituents. Let's find a way of deconstructing the spirit of leadership so that we can see the active ingredients in the spirit of leadership. The first thing we see in the spirit of leadership we can still see that in Genesis 2. In the beginning, God, who happens to be a spirit, created the heavens and the earth. So, one of your cutting edges as a possessor of the spirit of leadership is unbridled creativity. Creativity. Every problem you are facing now is a demand on your creativity. Every challenge you're dealing with right now is a demand on your creativity. And the truth is, if there is a demand, there has to be a supply. So you don't think you are unfortunate. You don't think you are in misfortune going out to happen just because there are problems all around you. Just because nothing seems to be working around you. It's a demand. A demand for something that is already in you. So, we cannot claim to possess the spirit of leadership and be bankrupt of creativity. And you see, we are not talking lingo. This is not just grammar. Because if you embody and imbibe this, and I think that's our greatest challenge, and that's why in the first speaker's delivery, you will see questions like, what if we have values and people are not doing this? What if there is a clash between our values? The problem is that many of us don't embody. We don't flesh out. The thing is a knowledge sitting in your head, but everything else is very different from what you claim you know. You see, so when we say the spirit of leadership has creative juices, I'm saying that can you unleash that creativity on you now, where you are right now? Can you use creativity to navigate from where you are to where you ought to be? So we're not just talking, language, semantics, creativity. Maybe you are even tired of that word. But the problem is not being tired of it. Is it flowing in your life? Or you are stuck? If you are stuck, it means you are linear. But you are supposed to be lateral. Chief, what's your name? Emmanuel. 2 plus 2 is what? 2 plus 2 is 4, isn't it? 2 plus 2, like that's what we think, isn't it? 2 plus 2, 2 plus 2, 2 plus 2. 3 plus 3 is what? It's 6. That's how we are taught. 3 plus 3 is 6. 10 minus 4 is what? But you see, you think it's 3 plus 3 that is 6, and so that's what you're even looking at. But you're not thinking that 20 minus 14 is also 6. That's lateral thinking. You can be boxed up in a place because you are following a cue in your mind. If you step outside the cue, this side there's no cue. Here there's no cue. In fact, you can even go this way. There's no cue. This thing must be as practical as it can get. I'm not in any way saying this is the easiest way to live, because God didn't put you on this earth to look for easy ways to live. That's why you are a leader. And one of the mainstays of leadership is creativity. That means even if it doesn't exist, you have what it takes to conceive it as an idea produce it. That's number one. That's number one. Number two, we're looking at leadership now. The spirit of leadership. Number two is in verse 2 of Genesis chapter 1. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was everywhere on the water. The earth was without and empty, and darkness was everywhere. Would you consider Genesis chapter 1 verse 2 as an asset? The earth was without form, formless, and void. Void means empty. The earth was empty, the earth was formless, and darkness was everywhere. That situation, would you say it's an asset? If that thing is sitting on your balance sheet, won't it drown it? But what does the spirit of leadership do? And the Spirit of God was moving on the face of the deep. This is the lesson in that. I want to tone it down so that it doesn't come across wrong. Okay, let me restate it. Genesis 1 verse 2. And the spirit of leadership helps us to understand. That is, if you consider verse 2 to be a negative and not a positive, that the earth without form and void, darkness on the face of the deep is not an asset, then the spirit of leadership will choose resourcefulness over resources. Or the spirit of leadership is resourcefulness, not resources. And this thought alone can shift your life significantly. Because many of us don't act because we don't have resources. Many of us stop when the resources finish. Many of us give up when there is no resource. But the spirit of leadership focuses on resourcefulness, not resources. You see, in life, it is not the people with resources who go ahead. It's the people who are resourceful. And our very continent is a blazing example of this wisdom. Is there any continent on the earth that is as endowed as Africa? In terms of resources, Africa as a land is the richest part of the earth. But you see, because it is not resources that put you ahead by resourcefulness, Africa's people are not the most resourceful on the earth. And that's how come we are behind. But it won't be long. Yes. Platforms like Idea Pulpit will help you wake up in your mind so you can latch on to resourcefulness and stop crying about your lack of resources. Who cares if you don't have a resource? What about resourcefulness? Japan is literally living on water. And yet it's more resourceful than the person who, if accidentally throws a seed anywhere, can harvest in 3 months. What are we talking about? So when you put the spirit of leadership under a spiritual microscope, one of the prominent elements will be that the spirit of leadership is resourceful. Do you know that God didn't bring anything? He created everything. You know, sometimes language is weak. So I could ask you, Emmanuel, right? Emmanuel, what are you bringing to the table? And then you check your pocket, left pocket, right pocket, back pocket, chest pocket, check your hand, check, you know. And if you're like me, you've barbered your hair, it's like, there's not even hair I'm bringing to the table. I may not bring anything, but I can create something on the table. Yeah. once went for an interview, bombarding me with questions, and I didn't know it. And I said, you know what? This thing you've asked me, I don't know, but I can find out. I changed the conversation. Do you know everything? Me too, if I start asking you questions, can you answer everything? But I can find out. Yeah. So don't tell me because I don't know the answer to this question you're asking me, I'm stupid. I'm not. I can find knowledge. That's the essence of schooling, isn't it? Teaching you how to think. Not giving you knowledge, or teaching you how to think. Because it's in the discovery of knowledge that you are empowered. Not when you are fed knowledge. That's why if you are not thinking, you can't be my friend. This is so important. Focus on being resourceful. You may not have money, but it's not your greatest disadvantage. You may not have contact, access, connections. That's not your greatest disadvantage. You may not even be beautiful or handsome. It's not your greatest disadvantage. You may be short, tall. All those are material stuff. Spirit supersedes materiality. So if you can activate the spirit of leadership, you can come from the bottom to the top. You can come out of a hole to lead. If only you can activate the spirit of leadership. But we are busy trying to activate everything but the spirit of leadership. I'm activating my face, activating my hair, activating my toenails, my fingernails. I'm all decked up, but I'm superficial. So, the spirit of leadership is a resourceful spirit. Resourceful spirit. If you claim you are in possession of the spirit of leadership, then resourcefulness must be a symptom you see of your life. Let's double up. So we see God laying out his creative enterprise, and we know that he is the spirit of leadership. So from Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1 to verse 25, God impacted the earth. See, we are studying the spirit of leadership, and we see that impact is one of the outcomes of the engagement of the spirit of leadership. But impact is not all there is to leadership. If you end at impact, you won't have a legacy. By verse 26, the Bible says that God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have, the word is dominion, but it means leadership. It means governance. It means mastery. It means management. Let them have the leadership over the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, the creeping things, cattle, and over all the earth. So God said, we are making man in our image and likeness, and we are going to delegate leadership to them. Why? We are making them in our image and likeness. Who is God? His spirit. That means you have that critical ingredient called spirit in you already, which is what mandates you to lead. So we're not going to look for the spirit of leadership per se, because we have the spirit of leadership. And I need to understand that. And when I do and understand the implications of that, then I'm unleashed. I become unstoppable first in my thinking, then in my words, and then in my deeds. This is so important. So God does two things. He impacts the earth, and then he creates a man and empowers him. That's the full scope of the spirit of leadership. It's impact and empowerment. That's why when Jesus rounded up his earthly ministry, all he had for property, for legacy, were disciples. And if somebody does that today, the bakers will more brag. You just leave people behind. When your colleagues are leaving houses and donkeys and farms, you just left people. But the true test of the legacy of any leader is the quality of people you leave behind. Quality of people. That's why I'm falling in love with ideas because people are being raised, isn't it? This thing we're doing now, something is happening to your heart. We are literally fertilizing your heart so that you can conceive some ideas. And that will make you. That will change you, will fix you. You are your greatest challenge, not your problem. You. If you can be fixed, your problem will disappear. It's not your problem, it's you. So, God touched, impacted the place called the earth, impacted spaces. He said, the birds of the air, space. He impacted the fish of the sea. He impacted creeping things on the earth. And then he created human beings in his image and likeness so that they now will have the leadership. That means the true test of your leadership is two-pronged, twofold. One will be the places, the spaces, and the spheres you impact. And two will be the people you empower. The best job on earth should have been teaching, and we've stopped it. If teachers do proper teaching, they will never lack in this world. But because teaching is like it's torture. So you can't wait to leave that place. We can go into that. So understand what God, the spirit of leadership, did. He impacted places, spaces, spheres, and then people. So if you have a vision from God, the asset test will be, does it impact places? Does it change spaces? Does it influence spheres? And number two, does it empower people? If it doesn't, you didn't get it from God. Maybe your own ambition to make money. Alright? So that's important. The spirit of leadership affects places, spheres, and spaces. And then it empowers people. Just these two modules, we can use it to judge every leader you come across. So we can even use our president as an example. And I'm not partisan in any way. We're just talking spirit of leadership. And spirit is not NBC and NPP. Spirit is apolitical. Are places, spaces, and spheres being impacted? That's the asset test of leadership. Number two, are people being empowered? That's it. That's it. So if you meet a correct leader, you will become something. He may not give you something, you will become something. Don't look for money from leaders. Let them make you. Oh my. All right, so I wrap up on this. And I'm saying this only because we are a people of faith. I wouldn't have touched it. We need to rediscover, reinterpret, and redefine what we have come to know as the move of the Spirit or revival. We need to redefine and reinterpret that as a people of faith. Because if we don't, we can have mighty revivals and be irrelevant in the spaces we live. And yet, when the spirit of leadership was moving in Genesis chapter 1, did you see what happened there? The earth that was without form and void, the darkness that was everywhere, and you know what it became 25 verses later? Beautiful real estate. There was light, illumination, and then God, created space, caused all the waters to gather to one side, dry land appeared. He called the dry land earth, and then the gathering of the waters, he called it seas. And then he spoke to the sea to be populated, spoke to the earth to be populated, asked the earth in verse 11 to bring forth grass and all kinds of plants. You know what he's doing? The Spirit is moving. You know what happens when the Spirit moves in our lives? One major symptom is that we are falling down. That's all. That I fell means the Spirit has moved. But when he moved in Genesis 1, there was mighty beautification of the earth. So if all I get from a move of the Spirit is picking myself off the floor, I have been shortchanged. I must get up from the floor more beautiful than I hit the floor. In my mind. And if we don't do that, we are growing irrelevant. We are growing irrelevant. And that's not God's plan for each and every one of us. So as I wrap up this morning, please understand that leadership is deeper than the subject we study. Please understand that there is an essence of spirit in leadership. It's not superficial, it's not plastic, it's organic. And it can only be organic because there is a spirit of it. There's a spirit of it, there's a life of it. And that's exactly what God put in you when he made you in his image and likeness. He made you to be a leader of the earth. He made you to be a leader of the earth. And in studying the spirit of leadership, we see the mighty river of creativity. We see the prioritization of resourcefulness over resources. We see how that there has to be impact and empowerment as the twin delivery of leadership or the spirit of leadership. In science of greatness, they've not discovered the spirit of leadership, because the spirit of leadership empowers people to be more. The spirit of leadership helps people, positions and platforms people to become all that God wants them to be. Finally, the spirit of leadership puts being ahead of doing. Being must precede doing. If you have the spirit of leadership, the first thing is to ensure that the leader is okay. Because we can't talk of leadership without of necessity touching the leader. So it is being first before doing. What we have in town is many people just jumping out to go and do things, and they think that is what leadership is. I've done this, I've built this, I've built that, I've built that. So yes, he has built a great company, but he has slept with 50% of all the women in the organization. Is that empowerment? That's not the spirit of leadership. The spirit of leadership starts with being before doing. If we just focus on the doing, we will build big businesses that are bankrupt the necessary values and culture. Finally, as a leader, you need to watch your personal culture, because your personal culture will veto the prophecy of God in your life. The way you live your life can frustrate God's intention concerning you. That's why you need to be particular about your personal culture. By that I mean the way you think, the way you speak, the way you behave. If you can master that,